And now, ladies and gentlemen, I am continuing in German. Shame on me, because you have all prepared wisely for the English. And that's a very good thing, because all these goals and partners and all the scope of this initiative, which is huge, right, has been simmered down and has been put into a nutshell. And as you can imagine, that was no easy job. So we will now witness the official handover of this nutshell, so to say, which is the battery passport content guidance. And we'll have that in a few minutes. But first, let's learn a little bit more about the background. And for this, I'm very pleased to welcome on stage Michael Kellner, Parliamentary State Secretary of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, BMWK, Professor Dr. Thomas Weber, President of Acatec National Academy of Science and Engineering, and Sophie Herrmann, partner at system change company Systemic. Thank you very much. You are lovely, great people. Now, these three personalities here are representatives of the Battery Pass Consortium. It's a 3-year project co-founded by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, and it is aimed at advancing the implementation of the battery passport. So you all have come together here at Hannover Messe to celebrate, so to say, the first milestone of this, which is the ceremonial handover and publication, of course, of the battery passport content guidance. So, Mr. State Secretary, first we would love to hear from you. Just grab one of the mics and take your space.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to be here again. We dedicated this morning to the battery passport, and I was looking forward to seeing you again here on that issue, because roughly a year ago, I think it was April 2022, we started the project with a grant letter of 8.3 million euro to start the battery pass. And I mean, it's nice to hand over 8.3 million euro, but it's much more important to see, what's in it. What are the results? And so, congratulations to you that within a year we have the first milestone. I think that's important. I think it's a huge applause for actually people who did that job. Congratulations.
Well done. Congrats.
And we're doing is because, as we know, batteries in car are even now a commonplace. I mean, we'll have 15 million by 2030 in cars alone, and the battery industry is scaling up rapidly worldwide. And battery have a vast potential for business and for decarbonization, right? And to fulfill these promises, we have to work very concrete on first the CO2 reduction potential of electric cars. And it crucial depends on the way how these batteries are produced actually, and of course later on also as a charge. Then secondly, we need to talk about the severe social impacts on the raw material issues and in the production for the batteries. And third of all, we need to think about circularity. We need to think about, in the end of a life cycle, maybe they will not end up in a car, will end up in a house in a second lifetime, but a third life cycle needs to be recycling, need to get back to resources and building new batteries. And for all that, we are working on this battery passport. I mean, it sounds like very official, a battery passport. And this is funded by the ministry, so it is official, and it aims to demonstrate a workable pilot of the battery passport that complies with the EU battery regulation. I mean, that's the aim, to setting the standards for the regulation. The work is done in a consortium between industry, academia, and think tanks, joining forces to demonstrate that a digital battery pass can be realized in a workable way. covering all necessary aspects to make sure that batteries are sustainable. And very important, and we talked yesterday night about it, also to include small and medium enterprises, because I'm also the commissioner for small and medium enterprises. I think we need regulation which also fit for small and medium enterprises. Therefore, let's work on that. That project builds on several other activities, partly also supported by our house, like the Catena X network, the Circular Economy Initiative Germany, or the Global Battery Alliance. Today, as I said in the beginning, we will hear the first results. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm glad that it is moving forward in that speed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. State Secretary. And with this, I kindly hand over to Mrs. Sophie Herrmann from Systemic.
Yes, thank you, Helena, and thank you especially, State Secretary Kellner. We're extremely happy to have this opportunity to launch the content guidance of the battery passport today here at the Hannover Messe. Mr. Weber and myself, we represent today the consortium that has been working, as Mr. Kellner said, for 1 year now on developing this content guidance. And why do we believe this is so important? The battery pass, and for that matter, any digital product passport, we believe is really the tool to enable the transition towards a circular economy. It's really a systemic effort that is being done. And how does that work? It basically creates transparency at 3 levels. So one very important is at the value chain level. It creates transparency of what's inside the battery, also dynamic data, how it has been used and been running, and that really enables reuse, but also in the end recycling of the battery. Then, of course, for the authorities, very important to be able to verify compliance. So, for example, that there's no child labor in the battery, but also that other sustainability and circularity criteria are met. And then finally, very important for the public. We all get access to what's inside this battery, and it makes us able to actually take a conscious choice by being able to compare batteries. So with that, we also believe that it truly is a tool to achieve competitiveness of batteries in the future. So what's this guidance about? This guidance, as Mr. Kellner said, it's been a 1-year effort of interpreting the battery regulation. So it gives the guidance on, and I will go through later, what are the aspects that are captured in this battery pass. But for the first time, actually, it's making publicly available guidance of what should be on this battery passport and how to interpret the regulation. It's also extremely timely. The regulation will actually enter into force later this year, so we are launching this content guidance before the regulation is entering into force. And so with that, I would like to thank our colleagues of the consortium, especially Akatech, that has been co-leading this effort with us at Systemic, and that actually, Mr. Kellner also mentioned it, has been pushing this topic for a long time also with the Circular Economy Initiative Germany. And then we should mention all our other consortium members, because they're extremely important to make sure that the battery pass is not only timely, but also relevant and also realistic and feasible for industry. And so we brought together Fraunhofer, Circular, Fireware, and then the industry actors of Audi, BMW, BASF and Umicore, as well as Twice and VDE Renewables, to jointly create this guidance that we will hand over today. So thanks also, of course, to my colleagues at Systemic, who have been doing a lot of this writing and are looking forward also to your comments and inputs, because this is really the version 1 of this document. So thank you.
Thank you, Sophie, and a very warm welcome from my side as well to all of you. Thank you for coming to Hanover, and I'm sure you are attaining the right meeting today. And a special welcome, of course, from my side as well to the Parliamentarian State Secretary, to you, Michael Kellner. It's a pleasure to have you here today, and thanks for your support of the project. Of course, also thank you for funding this important initiative. A big applause. That's important that we could really start 1 year ago. So a special thanks, of course, to all the team members from the ministry by itself, Ms. Schulze, which is here, Mr. Schulz is here, and for the passionate work of the whole consortium. That's really was a pleasure to work with you. Without you, we would never reach this result today. A few final words before we will come to the handover ceremony. Why is this project necessary? And what are the origins of the project Battery Pass? Maybe not everybody knows these details. For Acatec, for all of us, it's clear circular economy is absolutely necessary to achieve sustainability and strategic sovereignty in parallel. That's, for me, absolutely important. Finally, only this will lead to a modern, future-oriented resource strategy along the whole supply chain. Basis of the project is and was the Circular Economy Initiative Germany, the Initiative Germany activity, jointly led by Sustainability and Acatec, and we published the Circular Economy Roadmap in 2021, and the key recommendation out of this project was we have to do a battery passport because only with such a tool we can come from talking about this topic to a real activity, and bringing together digitalization and sustainability. And therefore, we as a team are really excited to present the first outcome today of this battery passport project, and to emphasize the need for trusted data sharing between the parties along the whole value chain, provided by this new tool, Battery Passport. And what's the meaning and the key result of the project? The Battery Passport, for me, is a role model, a blueprint of many digital product passports which will come in the future. A future major policy tool, I am definitely sure, will be implemented for many products to come, and then we are in the cycle to really do everything from now on more in a circular way. Important is the implementation must ensure first trusted data sharing on a need-to-know basis with a role-based access model. Important key messages. Second, data requirements are scientifically sound and implementable in the practice. We discussed this yesterday evening. Implementation is and will be a challenge, especially for small and medium enterprises. And therefore, we have to do everything possible to support now when it comes to implementation, especially these smaller companies, as they can also use this efficient tool. Therefore, we are really pleased to contribute with our content guidance and with the upcoming results along the upcoming new milestone. And I'm sure that will be help to shape the future of sustainability. And with that, let's now start. Let's come to the handover ceremony.
All right, then we will come to the official handover. Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. Maybe you could go a little bit more to the center of the stage, because it's a beautiful moment, so we'll make it beautiful. And with this, you have delivered timely. And this is the very first milestone. So thank you very much for meeting all here for this ceremony. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. State Secretary, a couple of smiles more can't harm for this moment. Thank you very much. Mr. State Secretary Michael Kellner, vielen, vielen Dank, dass Sie hier gewesen sind. Großartig. All right, and with this, I hand over to you, Sophie, and to you, Thomas, because you've got more information to share with us. Grab a mic each. I don't know who will do the honors. Okay. You will do that. All right. With this, I hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Is that working? Yeah. So thanks again, Helena. So we did the ceremony. We now want to lead over actually to a discussion on the content guidance. We will have a panel of the ecosystem and relevant actors in the value chain, and that also gives the chance to ask some questions. But in order to hand over to this expert panel, we would like to make a quick introduction on what this is actually about. And I think, let me see if this is working. A little bit too fast. Yes, so we would like to give you a quick overview of what's the scope of this guidance, but also Thomas will talk about what's the relevance and the impact of the battery pass and the guidance. And then thirdly, what are the next steps? So let me say a few words about the scope. So the battery passport actually for the first time regulates the information that will be gathered along the whole value chain of the battery. So it starts with material sourcing and production. So for example, sees that there are the minimum required levels of certain materials, the most important cobalt, lead, lithium and nickel, captured in the sourcing. It also looks at the use phase and makes sure that the performance and the durability aspects of the battery are captured. And finally, it also looks at end of life, so collection targets for these batteries and minimum recycling efficiencies. And over this whole value chain, it captures the carbon footprint of the battery to make sure it contributes to the goal of decarbonization. And I mentioned this earlier in my note that the battery passport actually captures both static data but also dynamic data. And this is particularly important when it comes to aspects such as reuse or so, that we understand actually how the battery was used and what's the state of health of this battery. So a quick overview of what are we talking about, which batteries and what does that actually mean. So on the one hand, there is the battery model information that is captured in the battery pass, but then also the individual battery information. This battery passport will be required 42 months after the regulation goes into force, which we expect this year. Then with our work on the content guidance, we are actually covering 3 types of batteries. There are the light means of transport batteries. There are industrial batteries with a capacity larger than 2 kilowatt hours. And then, of course, the electric vehicle batteries. There is, of course, the question, whose responsibility is the battery passport? First and foremost, it's the economic operator, so that is actually the player that is placing the battery on the market. But there are other groups that have access, and this is also mentioned by the regulation. There is the general public, of course. Then there is, of course, all the surveillance authorities, and in particularly the Commission that will have access to this. And then there is any other natural or legal person that has a legitimate interest. Now, this is, of course, a very important point that will interest many of you. There is some definition that will come by the Commission of who are these interested parties and how are they defined over the next month. So how have we, with this guidance, structured the information and basically interpreted the regulation? There are a few categories that you should be aware of. There is, of course, the general information of who manufactured, what's the weight, the status of the battery. Then there is labels and certifications. There is a declaration of conformity that will go into that section as well. Very importantly, the carbon footprint. So it will give information of what is the footprint of the battery, but also it will include a link that actually explains on how was this data collected and calculated. There is supply chain due diligence, a due diligence report. There is the materials composition, so are there any hazardous substances in this and which ones in the battery? There is circularity and resource efficiency, so everything that we said earlier on recycled contents, but also a manual for removal. So how do I actually take the battery apart at the end of its life? And I mentioned also performance and durability, so basically how it has been used, but also what is the capacity of this battery. So on the right there are some examples of negative events that would be captured. If there has been, for example, a full discharge, these kinds of things should be captured on the battery passport. So with that overview on what's inside and what's the scope, Thomas, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sophie. I think interesting results so far. And I will continue with only 2 charts before the experts then during their discussion go even a little bit more in some details. So what you can see here is a chart along the whole value chain of battery production, starting from the minor refiner up to the cell and module producer, the OEMs, because we started with the big batteries for the car industry, but also the other will follow, up to the user, that's a consumer which want to buy, hopefully, these EVs, and then up to second-hand use of these batteries to the recycler, which comes when the battery is on their end of life. And now the key question, what helps the battery passport, which major value potential is linked to such a clear and transparent process. Only a few examples from my side. Let's start with the miner and the refiner. The biggest advantage based on this process, we have now reliable verification based on ESG criteria. That's really an advantage. Everybody knows what these guys are now have done in their minds. And based on this transparency, it's an opportunity for all parties involved to come in the end to a greener price premium. Cell and module producer, clear based on this clear and transparent data, that's an improved sourcing decision now possible. And this ability to exactly know what kind of material is built in and what kind of batteries is installed in this car, we can really define now better design and production rules based on this field data. We know what is now what was positive and what leads in the end during the life cycle to a quality issue on the battery. For the automotive OEM, this data-driven circular business model gives in the end a huge opportunity to come to improved and faster sourcing decision. The users, clearly they know, for example, what kind of residual value is in front of us, and that's hopefully then clear. Can I really buy such a second-hand used car? And up to the recycler, reduce cost for the recycler through battery and content disassembly information, before you have to know what is behind this whole package of the battery. If you know this in detail, you can definitely reduce costs and to come in the end to a higher yield through better process control. So, and with that, what follow next, what we are doing as consortium during the upcoming next months, we have defined 4 different fields. First, value assessment and use cases. At the moment, we are doing some modeling for these individual use cases, and we will publish these results end of this year, beginning next year. Second, discussion of battery passport data details. It's planned to have a public webinar series where everybody can join and go a little bit more in details and link these information, this know-how to the specific processes. This starts next month. Third, technical standards of the battery passport. First results are available summer and fall this year. And really important for us is that we do a physical and virtual demonstrator to really see what is necessary that such a network, such a marketplace will go from the miner to the end user and the recycler and the end. Such a proving feasibility will done over the summertime, and we will start to give official information about the outcome during conferences and fairs starting end of this year. So a lot has been done, and hard work is in front of us. I'm happy to be here today. Thank you for this perfect work together in the consortium, and now with that I want to hand over back to the moderator, and now the experts have their chance to go a little bit more in details.
Thank
Helena,
you very, very much, Thomas, Sophie. Thank you. All right, so coming up now, thank you very much, is the expert panel. And with so much expertise on stage, we, of course, might need a little bit more space. So a round of applause for these gentlemen who, with sheer power of muscle, are creating space for expertise. Thank you very much. Perfect. So, we will now, after hearing about the specifications, about the frame setting, about what will be on the battery pass, we will now discuss the status and the activities around the battery passports. And I would kindly ask the panelists to make their way on the stage now. Why not? Ilka von Dalwijk is making the spearhead, so to say, from European Battery Alliance. She's policy manager at EIT Energy, and you are also an advisory council member of the Battery Pass Consortium and serves as battery sector lead in the SERPAS. That's right, SERPAS Consortium. All right then. So right next to Ilka van Dalwijk is Dr. Franz Geier. He's head of collaboration zero emission mobility at BMW Group, and he has been driving battery passport topics for years, actually, from the industry, according to governmental requirements. And he's also involved in the Battery Pass Consortium, since the BMW Group is one of the 11 consortium partners. Then right next to Mr. Geier, we have Dr. Thorsten. No, we don't. It is Uwe Seidel, my dear friend, head of section Systemic Environmental Innovation and Industrial Policy at, you said it wouldn't come up, but of course it comes up, VDI-IT, and he coordinates the development on a European scale. I think you know him from the very start, so I don't need to say too many words because you're already known, which is a good thing. And then we have Dr. Thorsten Freund now. He's head of project management battery passport of the Global Battery Alliance. He is delegated. The BASF has to do without part of your energy because he's seen to Battery Pass project since 2020, and next to the Global Battery Alliance, Thorsten also needs the BASF contribution to the Battery Pass Consortium. So, with all here present, we do need two very skilled moderators, and they will be Stefanie Schenk, project lead of the Battery Pass Consortium, together with Dr. Johannes Simberg, team lead for the Battery Pass at Akate. Okay, now a big welcome, have fun, take it away.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Helena, and a warm welcome not only to the Battery Pass panelists, but also to the audience here at Hannover Messe today, and also to those that are actually joining online, since the event is actually live streamed today. We are very happy to be here, and as you have heard before, the Battery Pass Consortium comprises a lot of different organizations. So we represent not only the industry, but also science, academia, and technology companies. And we grouped today here on stage 4 representatives that have very different roles. So we have, as we just heard from Helena, the Advisory Council, we have partner organizations, we have the funding agency, and the industry or core consortium members, so to say. And together with these colleagues, we would now like to discuss a couple of questions. So what impact does the Battery Pass Consortium have and had so far? What are next steps that will be required, and how well prepared is the industry at the moment for the implementation of the Battery Passport? We will use around 30 minutes for that, and then you also will have the opportunity to address questions. So please note down the questions you have, and also for those online, you will have the possibility to submit your questions, and we will try to answer as many as we can during the remaining 10 minutes at the end. So we're looking forward to that, and I hand over for the first question to the panelists, to Johannes.
Thank you, Steffi, and also very warm welcome from my side to everyone here and online. But let's start with the first question here on the panel on stage. So as we heard, you have different roles in the battery ecosystem, in the Battery Pass Consortium. From your individual view, what is the impact that the Battery Pass project has made now in its first year? What are core achievements and challenges that you see? Torsten, would you like to start?
Maybe let's start with the overall mission. So the battery pass is a measuring instrument which will give us information about the battery and how it has been manufactured, plus the means of steering batteries into a circular economy. And with this complex situation, this life cycle, we need to be very precise on what we are talking about. So the Battery Pass project is the key instrument of defining what has to be measured. Nonetheless, the Battery Pass project, which we are talking about here and today, is only one part of the entire ecosystem. This whole ecosystem is global. Raw materials coming from Africa, South America, Australia are processed in China, coming back into the European and the German market. Consequently, we need to speak here in a global context. And first and foremost, the energy transition is our main driver for batteries, and we must be doing it right and sustainable from the beginning. Here, we not only fulfill compliance, but we need to go beyond compliance to make it really sustainable and responsible. Respect nature and respect human rights. And therefore, it's a collaboration of many institutions. We have the Battery Pass project. We have the Global Battery Alliance, which is looking especially on the upstream and defining the rules, what is really a compliance. 140 organizations are joining forces to establish not only the battery passport, but really establish the sustainable value chains on the ground. We have Surpass bringing this into a broader European context. We have projects like Catena X and many private organizations who are helping to collect and transport the data. And with this ecosystem, it's really a common achievement that we are building the responsible and sustainable value chain together.
Thank you, Torsten. Thank you, Torsten. Indeed, very important to see on the landscape what's going on besides our own project. Uwe, I think you have also a very broad view on that. You expanded on it earlier. What's your take on the battery pass after year one?
Yeah, I can follow directly to Torsten's words, because for us it is very important that we have this synergy effect from the project. So as a program management agency, of course, we are looking for single projects, and we are looking for the Battery Pass project as well. We are very happy with this, I can say. But as a communicator and networker, we are very, we need projects to have an open mind and have a voice to all the other projects which we are funding, so that we can really build the network, that we can really build partners together, not only in Germany, in Europe, and worldwide. Yeah. So, and that is our approach as well. So, as a national program management agency, of course, we are really happy that the Battery Pass project in the last year was very enthusiastic, not only in between their own consortium, but as well towards the other projects. And this is helpful for us in many ways, because it's even always better when the projects do it by themselves with the knowledge, with the expertise, with the enthusiasm, than from our side. So for that, I'm really happy with the first year of the battery pass, and I guess the industry is as well.
Maybe if I can take this, Paul, thanks for the two speakers already. I think if you are talking about impact, one of the biggest impact not mentioned yet is that we have this project in place, because this is the impact we need to get into action. And I don't know any other project in whole Europe area or even worldwide dealing with battery passport, only Surpass, but it's a product passport. But it's not a battery passport, which is a special product passport. That's, I think, one impact that's very necessary to mention here. A second impact, which was touched already, is also this German project is driven by the automotive industry and funded by the German ministry. It's from the construction from day one or even zero, meant to be open to all others, not only automotive applications, to all relevant applications using batteries. And it's not meant to be a German project, but from Germany to the world. So this is why we are talking English now, I guess, because we talk also English in our project, usually. And I think keeping the topic of impact, we should look forward, what is the impact that we should meet with the project. And to really get our impact is to have this minimum viable product and showing evidence on the evidence-based results on the mechanism of the battery passport application. And this is where we really need to focus on to deliver this, because we've heard about Catena X, we've heard about LCA methods. That's developed elsewhere. To get the best impact out of this project, we need to focus on our deliverable, which is the minimum viable product.
Thank you, Franz. And then last but not least, Ilka, you're especially involved on the European level. So what's your take on the battery pass?
Thanks very much. Yes, I'm here representing the European Battery Alliance, and taking a step back, when we started our work 5-6 years ago, there was virtually no battery industry existing in Europe, and we developed the first set of action for the European Commission on what Europe really can do together to develop this industry in Europe. And many of those ideas centered around, actually already then, around a battery passport. And many of the industry participants saw this as a tool for the European industry to be able to compete against our competitors, not only on price, but also on sustainability. And in order to do this and showcase really how you produce the battery, how much CO2 footprint you have inside your battery, you need some kind of a tool. And I think this battery pass, that is part of the battery regulation, it was a very bold step by the European Commission to launch this regulation without actually knowing what they were doing, if you are so, if you want to phrase it like that. So they just put it out, and we saw already today a big impact also on the global arena, I would say. We received a lot of phone calls, and they were asking us, what is Europe up to? How can we comply with this regulation that it's not even there? We see that there is a change in mindset of the industry really happening as we speak. And Torsten already mentioned it. It's a new industry that we are building in Europe, and we have the chance really to do it right from the beginning, thinking about sustainability, thinking about how we source the raw materials, how we put it back in a circular way. And I think the Battery Pass project, the German ones, is really what I've seen, like Franz said, it's like the first really concrete action, like, let's try how to do this. And I think by doing this, you will be a guidance for the Europeans, and I think also for the global arena. So I'm very happy with the first year.
Thank you so much. And with that, Steffi, the one.
Yes, thank you very much. So we heard a lot about the impact the Battery Pass Consortium had so far, and a little bit also on the achievements. But now what we're interested in to hear from you is what will be the next steps that are following the content guidance publication. So what is required as next steps, and Also, what is the industry supposed to do, and where do we stand in 3 to 5 years? Franz, maybe to you.
Many thanks. So where are we in 3 to 5 years? So hopefully we have had a very good, successful project, and we have some evidence and a minimum viable product which we can build on to get this idea and project go reality. We have hopefully some more projects coming up joining this idea and supporting the implementing act in the battery regulation. And of course the industry and this consortium has done a very good job in getting an implementable and harmonizable battery passport, which is, as I said before, starting from this kind of speedboat project, setting first findings and moving along until the one-fits-all battery passport into the world. And this is then an enabler of a circular economy which hasn't been there before. It could even be an accelerator, because if we look at our supply chains nowadays, we really face reality there, which means we would like to strive, and we as BMW, we have circular as one of our 3 strategic pillars. Circular means we have control about the whole supply chain and the data. We nowadays, on contract-based supply chains, we asked for the informations already, but we do not get them. The consequence is you can have the information available and the supply or not. And this is not an option, and we hope that we get, with a battery passport application in an area where we have this transparency to our customer to accelerate the circular economy. This is where I see this coming in 3 to 5 years. And to get there, maybe just a last word, we need to be very tight collaborating, because it was said before already from Thomas Weber, we need to have this need-to-know information. So this means everyone needs to come up with its core or its condensed need-to-know information, because this then will avoid a lot of data collected and also probably ease up the situation in GDPR and IB topics which we face now, which are often the topic why we do not get the information right now in the value chain. This is it.
Thank you, Franz. And I think, Thorsten, you can also talk on behalf of the member companies of the Global Battery Alliance in terms of next steps required.
Yes, I think one of the key elements will be to really agree on a common language of sustainability, what it means. And this common language is certainly supported by the battery passport, who is defining the individual data fields and who is defining the interpretation of the data fields. The second aspect is really to get the action on the ground. With the data we get through a battery passport program, we then need to drive action towards the local conditions for the workers, for the people, and for the environment. And with that information from a battery passport, members of the Global Battery Alliance have committed to drive the action where the action is needed. And this is really a global challenge for the value chains to be responsible, sustainable, and of course resilient. So we need to avoid any specific high-risk exposures on monopolies of certain materials which come from critical sources. These needs to be stabilized, and stabilization needs to happen on the ground. That is really the basis for our European prosperity in the battery field, and that will make a responsible energy transition happen.
And Ilka, maybe to you again, looking at Surpass, so looking at digital product passports in general, what do you see as the next steps that are necessary?
In Surpass, we are looking at the development of a prototype of so-called digital product passports, DPPs, where batteries, they are kind of in the lead and serve as a role model, I think, for a lot of the other value chains that we are looking at right now, like electronics and textiles, for example. And I think the beauty of Cearpras is really that we're trying to get this interoperability, but also the language right from the start, so that we actually can compare apple with apples and pears with pears. And I think this entire thing, this language that you mentioned, Thorsten, it's so crucial for the industry really to see the passport. It's something that they can use in their business and that it's useful. It's not only a cumbersome compliance thing that they need to report on, but it actually enables new business cases. And I think this use cases that you're also doing in the battery pass is something that we are, I think, working on quite well together within Cearpras and the battery pass project. So I think that's a very good next step, actually trying to feel what is really, if we're doing this, what will happen, what is required, how will this actually work. So.
And Uwe, how do you look at that, given there are many projects in the market and the Battery Pass Consortium also has a specific timeline? What do you see as necessary steps?
From the view of the ministry, of the federal ministry, and giving all this funding money into very, very good and best selected projects, it's of course our wish that others will follow. Not only BMW from the automotive industry, but as well other partners, of course, from the industry, to make this greater, to make this bigger, and to make it, to give the first initial money. And always the idea behind that is all tax payment, of course, taxpayer money, yeah? and the taxpayer wants that this will be a success, not only for the project, which will be, I think, obvious that will be a good project, but the follow-up, the networking, not only in Germany, and the visibility of the results. This is what we expect and what we hope to find in the next years.
Thank you, Uwe. And maybe moving on, we already talked a little bit about the supply chain and exchanging information. Maybe from the point of view of the small and medium enterprises, what would you recommend to them in getting ready for the battery passport? Maybe Franz, also looking into your supply chain, what would you want to tell them?
I think, as I mentioned, and it was said before many times, join this project because it's open. Stephanie, you have this address which we can share, and everyone is invited, not limited to Germany, to contribute. And I, even from our OEM's point of view, I already recommended a lot to join this project because it's for free. It's your voice shaping this project to the maximum results in getting harmonizable across all applications and the relating entire value chains. So if you have any questions, the best thing is join the consortium.
Yeah. Exactly. We're open for any supporting partners and to talk to everybody, of course. I guess it's the same for GBA. Thorsten, what is your take on SMEs?
I think we are talking now about the implementation of a battery passport, and I would say the reporting will come and it will never go. So we need to prepare for it. If we have projects like the battery pass, Cearpras and GBA, we need to strive for interoperability. That means that especially the smaller enterprises will have a very simple scheme to fulfill their reporting obligations once for all the entire network partners. That is really the charm of our project assembly, that we are ensuring this interoperability and speak the same language. That reduces the effort, that reduces the cost, and that frees up resources to drive impact. And I would say here we are creating really a new ecosystem which no one can do alone, and therefore it's highly welcome that all these initiatives are together here on stage and work together in real life.
Thank you, Thorsten. And Uwe, I think you're also interacting with a lot of companies. What do you hear from them? Where do they stand at in implementing?
I think it's a question of standardization as well, to make it easier to join in on a later stage. We have a lot of interest, especially because you started earlier with the GBA, to be part of the GBA activities, to learn more about the standards you offer, but most of these very small companies are afraid for the effort what they have to bring into these activities. And I think it's our job from all of us to make it easier for them to join in. And that will be, one part will be standardization.
Thank you. And Ilka, how do you approach SMEs in Surpass, for example?
I think, well, a lot has been said already, but I just wanted to pick up on one word, and that is simplicity as well. And I think the role of all of our different partners here, from the GBA over the IPCI, the CRPass, the Battery Pass, I think when we're looking at a lot of the work, especially on the battery pass side, the foundation is really the battery regulation. And there's still a lot of secondary legislation that is still out in the open, how it will be formulated. And I think here the battery pass can make a big difference as well, giving some guidance also to the Commission. And I think by taking part in this work, we can also make sure that we do not over-regulate and really keep it simple, especially for the smaller businesses, making it easier to report and have it done once for all. And then there will be a lot of, apart from the mandatory requirement, I think a lot of optional, things that we can use the battery passport for. But for the smaller enterprises, we really need to safeguard them from too much reporting.
Good point. Thank you. Steffi?
So I think we actually triggered already a lot of questions. So I tend to go over now to actually give you the opportunity to address your questions. Do we have anybody from the audience here who would like to address it directly? Otherwise, I would call out the ones we received online. Anybody wants to address the question? That's not the case, so I think we would go over to the first one submitted online, which is: how is it planned to transfer the battery pass activities into a formal international standard? Is there somebody of you who would like to pick this one up?
So I think, as I said before, this project is a kind of speedboat, bringing evidence to the table. And it's necessary to do it now because the implementing act along the battery regulation ending in 26 need to have this collaborative work upfront, and it needs to be distributed all over the participants and feedbacked and a few loops to get really the best out of it, which is in the end implementable. The ultimate goal needs to be one battery passport solution, at least for Europe, hopefully for the world, because Thorsten will follow up on this maybe. We have global supply chains and we need to secure this transparency from the raw material in a circular economy. So how will this be implemented? Or what the question was somehow, how will this so I think first is the evidence-based results coming out of this project, other projects, further projects, and then combine this along the Battery Regulation Implementing Act for the battery passport data requirements. This will, from my point of view at least, give a very good starting point.
Anything to add from one of the others? Otherwise, I think we can take another one. Let's look at, that's one for you, Thorsten. How is a Global Battery Alliance and Catena X connected?
These are two organizations which are working on battery passport. We need to go a little bit in the differentiation. What does that mean? So Global Battery Alliance is dealing very much with the reporting standards, focusing at the moment on greenhouse gas footprint, human rights and child labor, but extending this work to how do we describe comprehensively environmental, social and governance issues. Whereas Catena X is providing an implementation network. How can we translate this into a digital world? And here both organizations are exploring how to bring both worlds together and make a dent in the universe. And I see some colleagues from Catena X already here in the audience, which will probably discuss their perspective later today here as well.
Very good. So let us take another one. Maybe let's take the one, what is meant with minimum viable product? Will it be a technical product?
Maybe you are the project lead.
You're the project lead.
So what is a minimum viable product? Will it be a technical product? What the Battery Pass Consortium is doing is that we are building a demonstrator, and our objective is to test the link between the content and the technical standards we are suggesting. So I think it's critical that you actually do not just publish recommendations, but that you test it also on your own, because these interfaces will then unveil further challenges that we need to solve, or where we have to direct also other companies. I am well aware that there are, and I'm looking at Franz, also next projects on the horizon, so to say, that have a different level of minimum viable product, specifically if you look at building a demonstrator also, and maybe you can say something about what's up on the horizon.
So as I said before, I guess I'm also a board member of the BEPA. Uwe had a nice slides showing all the organizations linked, and within the BEPA, which is the Partnership for Batteries in Europe, funded by Horizon Europe, there will be a call coming in September, also dealing with the battery passport topic, taking up the findings out of this project, but by design and on purpose, already inviting all applications from the very first beginning and their related entire value chains. And the most important topic is taking from a minimum viable product out of this project a few pilots showing evidence really to shape and form the one application called Battery Passport, which fits all relevant partners in the value chain from industry and give the best recommendation for the implementing act in the battery regulation. And you're happy to join as well.
And Torsten, you made your very own experiences on a battery passport pilot. Maybe you want to share some experiences with us.
Absolutely. So minimum viable product sounds as is a really specific, well-defined term. I have to respectfully contradict here. A minimum viable product will be built stepwise. So our approach is to take what we have as standards and proposals for regulation and then implement it in practice. So last year, 2022, we have taken for building pilot projects along the entire value chain from mines in Congo or in Chile through the entire value chain to batteries which are built into cars. And the experience we made has raised more questions which need to solve than proving answers. Nonetheless, the message is a battery passport is possible and will give us an enormous value in understanding of the value chains and driving action.
Yes, very good. And since we have talked a little bit at least about more operative things, I think there's one question that I can actually address to you, Johannes, which is which dynamic data must be made available on a mandatory basis?
Yeah, that's a very good question and will be detailed in our content guidance, of course. But it's mainly in the performance and durability part of the battery pass where we have dynamic data. So that means remaining capacity, remaining energy in the battery or the SOH of the battery. Or for the durability side, also the cycles that the battery has already gone through, charge and discharge cycles, calendar year, aging, and so on. So there will be a broad array of actually dynamic data that we will have in the battery passport according to the battery regulation. So not to forget, we always follow the battery regulation, usually at least in our recommendations for dynamic data, but also static data.
Very good. I see another question, that is, what is the difference between your passport and Article 65 in the European regulation? I think I can take this one. So there is ideally no difference. The regulation is the regulation and comes along with certain requirements that the industry has to fulfill. So what are we doing? We are looking into the regulation and try to filter out the mandatory aspects and write a recommendation in our content guidance on how to implement that in your individual organization. And we also take these, what we call content requirements, then forward in our technical work streams, where we on our own try to build, as said, a demonstrator and look at the infrastructure that is needed to build the system. So So the difference between what we are doing is that we are also adding a perspective on, so to say, voluntary aspects or recommendations. So we look at how, for example, you can also harmonize with other regulations, not only national ones, but also European level ones. And we also look how sustainability and circularity could be further increased. These are clearly pointed out in our content guidance as, so to say, voluntary aspects. And saying that, I think I can address also again the panelists, because what we found out when we looked at that is that it will be necessary actually that you can use the battery passport not only as a compliance instrument, but also as a business tool to, as an organization, at individual perspectives that you would like to include. And that's something maybe one of you wants to pick up again, the relevance of these voluntary additions.
I think those voluntary additions, I think they're very. I think it's a beauty about the battery passport project that you actually can have this additionality on the basis of the legal requirements, and this will be driving the industry into a more sustainable way. And I think those who will not join into this movement, they will be left behind. And I see this question there: how can we get the data from Chinese suppliers? I think it's a two-folded question, and maybe Torsten can elaborate on the second one. After all, you're representing the Global Battery Alliance. But one is simply they have to comply with the EU regulation, and there are certain of those data that are required if you want to place a battery on the European market. So there is no way around. If you have to do due diligence requirements, then you have to show where you have sourced your material. So I think this is one way to create this more transparent supply chains. But I think when it comes to really driving people into a more sustainable supply chain, I think maybe you can talk about a little bit how you work within the Global Battery Alliance with Chinese actors.
Yeah, so you're hinting at the point where really the battery passport makes a difference. So once we start with the compliance of the regulation, you said rightly, if you want to make business in Europe, you have to be part of the system. And companies worldwide want to be part of the European market as it's enormously attractive. So consequently, they will report according to the standards of the battery passport, and they have to ensure that the reporting is accurate, and to ensure the reporting is accurate, change has to happen on the ground. And that can be a mechanism how to drive the change towards sustainability in the world. And as we have been working in our pilot projects together with Chinese companies, I do think this is, if you're focusing specifically on China, very well understood and is driving forward. But it's not only China, it's really a global common effort we need to undertake to build our supply chains in the way we need to have them for sustaining the planet.
I see one question here that raises a lot of interest, so let us pick up this one. It's a very long one, so I avoided it a little bit so far. Have there been similar activities to develop a battery passport in other European member states or by other consortiums? How have you connected to them? And what is the reaction of the non-German car producers to the battery passport content guidance developed in a German project? Maybe you want to take that.
Yeah, maybe I can answer the first one. And as we talked about the IPCEI, the European project, and we talked about synergies and spillover effects, it's very obvious that the other European member states and the companies in these member states and the industry are very curious about the German project. And they are very aware of what is happening in Germany with this project. And of course, in the global and European and global sense with the Global Battery Alliance. So I really don't know if there's a need for another project. Of course, if it's a free world, everyone can build a new consortium. But I guess it would be a better idea to follow your idea to join in the battery pass project from the European side, from other European partners, to make it more diverse and active. And when we talk about the automotive industry, this is of course your part, but on the political sense, we are coordinating As I said before, the EUBAT-IN, the European Battery Innovation, the second IPCEIs, where we have a clear governance structure with all the other member states, where we inform them, we make conferences, workshops, and so on. And of course, we are trying to promote the idea of the battery pass on the Global Battery Alliance in these different governance structures to find new followers for the idea and for the project. And car industry is your part.
Many thanks. So I think I can even extend it to non-German car makers, but also to non-German value chain participants, because I'm wearing now two hats. The one is EUCA and ACEA hat, which is assembling all the OEMs, including the commercial vehicles. But I'm also wearing now the BEPA hat again, which represents the entire value chain. And of course, within the OEMs, there was a bit tension in the beginning. They've been looking at us, what are you doing here? Didn't you invite us? No, we were preparing something, was our feedback, which is open for you to join. And proof, evidence, I invited a lot, and they followed this invitation and are now part of this German project. And the same for other participants of the value chain, whether it's like NLX in the second use area or some others in the upstream area. This is, I think, okay, there was a bit tension in the beginning because, the Germans again, but nevertheless it was meant by design to be open, and this is now where all these efforts around Europe at least bring or join for a competitive solution which then will be implementable in the end and really bring the one battery fits all solution to the market. Yeah.
The fact that we also have Surpass and the Global Battery Alliance on stage today also shows that we are regularly aligning, trying to ensure that we are harmonizing also these initiatives. I think there's one more question for you, Johannes, maybe, that is in the interest of many. That is the one on OEMs have different methods to estimate battery state of health. Every method will output different state of health number with different accuracy. How would you standardize battery state of health?
Of course, I'm going to decide. No. It's obvious that standardization, we mentioned it already before, will need to take place. And there's ongoing operations on the European level, where the European Commission has the standardization requests to the standardization organizations. So a lot of those things will happen there. For the SOH, for this particular question, there is already a standard for electric vehicle batteries. But for other batteries, there will be more to be done. So we describe this in detail, of course, in the content guidance, so also referring to that one if you want to hear some details about the SOH. But in general, standardization is where it will need to happen, and that's going to have to happen with the standardization organizations.
Very good, and I think we are soon coming to an end, so we might pick up one more, and one I can quickly answer on my own, I think. So the second, do we have any technical reference design specifications, guidelines to comply with the battery passport? This is what we are actually developing right now, so just stay tuned and follow our project. The technical work streams are ongoing, and they will publish something very soon, ideally late in the summer this year, latest early next year, and then we can also share publicly some of our first insights on that. The last one I would address now to you, and particularly maybe to Thorsten again, is how do you plan to integrate the battery passport pilot project results presented by GBA in January?
Yes. The pilot projects have brought a lot of information how in practical the battery passport can work. This information, of course, goes seamlessly into the Battery Pass project, and both activities, Global Battery Alliance and Battery Pass, will seamlessly work together. As I want to emphasize, we must have one standard that must be common content, same language, and it must be technically interoperable. There is no use if any organizations show egoism and self-interest, just this is my passport. We must have one passport which clearly interoperates along the entire value chain in all geographies to really build this one information system.
Very good. I I think there will be further opportunities to address questions, so that hasn't been the last time you're able to do that. And with that said, we're coming to an end, and Johannes has a last closing words of course.
Yeah, thank you, Steffi. And first of all, thank you to all of our panelists here for the really great discussion, for you listening here in Hannover and online. I just want to point out one more thing, that we published a content guidance today, and look out for our webinar series that will start in May, where we can discuss about more in details, where we have Q&A even in more detail than is possible today here. So stay tuned and join us in the Battery Pass along the way with our content guidance, with our actions in our webinars. Thank you so much.